Okay, so here we are. We're looking at linear systems part 3. Okay, we did 2 assignments already on linear systems. This one is going to start off with some easier examples. So we did 1 and 2 in class, and then I did number 3 on the board for everybody. So number 4 is the one I'll go over, and if you need more of a lesson, then I might make a longer video eventually about this. But for now, I'm only going to do number 4, and you can try to use what we learned from this. Or stop by office hours also if you need a longer lecture on this topic, all right? So what we're going to do is understand that we're using the same steps that we had before, okay? It's the same exact steps where we have to isolate the variable. We're following the same procedure that goes to solving system by substitution. Step 1 is isolate a variable. So let's talk about how that's actually already done here, okay? In this case, both y is isolated as 3x minus 11, and y is also isolated as minus 4x plus 3. Okay, so y is equal to both of these expressions. All right, and that's the idea of the system, right? Both of these equations have to be true at the same time, and that's what we want to try to solve. We want to find the numbers y and x that make both of these equations true. Okay, so because the first step is isolate a variable, it doesn't really matter which one we pick. Okay, so we'll pick one for the sake of picking one. And in this case, the one that we pick is going to be, let's try 3x minus 11. So we're going to write y equals 3x minus 11. Okay, and then we'll put that in the box. And like we said, this thing is done. Okay, we need that later. Okay, so now we're done with step 1 because the variable that we isolated is y. All right, the next thing that I was telling you guys to do is, again, like, let's call this the red equation. And then we'll have the blue equation. Okay, so step 2 is to substitute into the other equation. Okay, and the other equation in this case would be the blue one. So what I taught everybody to do then would be to just copy the blue equation. Okay, and then I taught everybody substitute in for the one that we isolated. And the variable that we isolated this time was y. That's what we isolated. So I want to substitute in this expression in this red box for y. So when I do that, that means I'm going to turn y into a blank parentheses. This is the way I taught you guys to substitute. And then here we'll put minus 4x plus 3. And then now what goes over here on the left side? Okay, well look, y is equal, right? Y is equal to 3x minus 11. So we're going to go put that in right here. 3x minus 11. Okay, so I want you to notice that this problem is exactly like the other one. It just feels different because the setup is slightly different. But the way we execute all the steps is pretty much exactly the same. Okay, we're going to do everything that we would do anyway. It's just much simpler. And it might be so much more simple and so different looking that you'll think that you don't know how to do it. But actually, we're already at step 4. Okay, because there is no distributive property. So that means right now all we want to do is solve it. Okay, and now I want you guys to think. There's 2 options that I could do. Okay, before you write this down on your paper, tell me. Am I going to add 3x to both sides, okay? That's one possibility. Or sorry, not add 3x, but take 3x on both sides, okay? Because when I teach people to do algebra, okay, what I try to teach them to do is you want to get the variable on one side of the equation as soon as possible, okay? And so right now what I see is that I have the x on both sides of the equation, and that's not what I want, okay? So I have 2 options. I can either move the 3x, or I can move the 4x. If I want to move the 3x, then we can see that that will end up eliminating the 3x on the left side because I have these 2 things are inverses of each other. They're opposites, right? 3x and negative 3x. Those will cancel each other out. And all that will be left is negative 11. Whereas in this one, I'll have negative 7x because, again, both of those are negative. And we'd have plus 3. Okay? This is fine. And we could solve the problem this way. Okay? But I'd like you to notice that this coefficient is negative. And if I decide to do my work and I forget to divide by a negative, that can cause a problem, okay? So over the years, I've kind of taught my students not to be too superstitious about this step, because you can't do it anyway, but probably we want to go the safest way. And so that means if you can avoid using a negative, maybe we're better off doing that, okay? So what we're going to do right now is we're going to actually add 4x to both sides, okay? We'll take the other route. Notice what happens this way. When I add 4x to both sides, now what do I have on the left? I get 7x minus 11. Okay? And then now what happens? I'm going to add 11 to both sides. Okay, and this is going to give me 7x equals 14. And now we feel like we have some balance, right? Because look at that number, that's a multiple of 7. And so we know that we did something all right. So now what we could do is divide both sides by 7, okay? And that's going to give us x equals 2. All right, so what we're looking at now is the beginning of the end here, right? We need to find the two numbers, x and y, that make the red and blue equations true. And so far, we only found the number x. All right, x has to be 2. So what would the other number have to be? Well, to figure that out, we could calculate y by plugging in our x value into this expression right here, right? So we're going to take that x, and we're going to plug that right there for x, okay? We should probably be able to do this in our head, right? 3 times x will be 3 times 2. 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 minus 11, okay, will give us negative 5. So we know what we expect to get, but now we're going to go ahead and plug in our number and show all our work. Okay, this is 6 minus 11, and that gives us negative 5. So we have our value for our y coordinate. And then we could also say, like we should every time, that this is a solution to the system of equations. Okay, and rather, I said A, okay, and I'm going to go ahead, and I'm glad we have this teachable moment. This is not a solution. This is the solution, and I think it's worth being that specific, okay? These are straight lines, and 2 straight lines can only cross in 1 point, all right? 2 distinct straight lines have to cross in 1 point at most, all right? So we have this problem complete, okay? We can always go double check our numbers to make sure they're right. Okay, we can see what happens when I do 3 times 2, right? That gives me 6, and 6 minus 11, does that give me the y coordinate negative 5? It does. So we can see that these two numbers make the red one true. 4 times 2 makes negative 8, and negative 8 plus 3 also makes negative 5. So since I get the y coordinate, when I plug in x, it makes both of these equations true. Get it? Okay, so now we'll go over to work on the 2 hard problems, which are 6 and 7. Okay, so number 6, there is no good choice. When we go to isolate the variable, we don't know whether to choose the red or the blue one. There's not really a great choice here, okay? I'm going to go with this one because it seems like we'll have pretty solid momentum, and because everything is a multiple of 3, maybe everything will divide pretty nice, all right? So I'm going to work with this one. Okay, so I want to isolate. I have to choose either the x or the y. It doesn't really matter which one we choose. I'll choose the x in this case. So I'm going to isolate x. Because I want to isolate x, that means I'm going to move the y to the other side. Okay, but when I do that, it's going to change sign. So the 3x is going to stay there. But now on this side, we'll have negative 3y plus 9. Okay, now what I would want to do to finish this problem is to divide both sides by 3. And we're getting pretty close, right? We just canceled out those 3, so now we have that x is equal to negative 3 over 3y plus 9 over 3. Okay, so this gives me negative 1y, and then 9 divided by 3 is 3. And so if we want to finish this all the way to simplify it truly as much as possible, we should have this. Okay. So we are done with step 1. And remember, that was much different than the front. Okay, so I hope you guys can feel that. We have to get good at algebra, and we have to know what we're doing. We have to keep track of all the steps and everything that's happening. All right? So the next thing that we got to do is copy the other equation, right? We're going to plug that into the other equation. So just I started off with the blue. We're going to copy the red one. And because I isolated x, okay, since that's the one I isolated, that's the one I want to go substitute for, right? So that's the one that I'm going to change into a big blank parentheses, okay, and then everything else will be copied. And then again, we do that 2 times, okay? And the more focused you are when you do this, the more you'll remember, okay? That right here we got to have minus y plus 3. So at this point, we're done with step 2. We substituted in because it's there, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do the distributive property. So the distributive property tells me I got to do 6 times negative y, and a positive times a negative is a negative. So we get negative 6y. 6 times positive 3 is 18, and then we have to copy the 5y and everything else in that line that didn't change. Okay? Now we can combine our y's, and for the purposes of the video, I'm going to go ahead and rearrange the terms. Like I was telling my students today, this does hurt me a little bit physically to write these little steps over and over again that I know I could do them in my head. Okay, and when I was a kid in your shoes, I didn't want to write them either. All right, and so if you get them, I understand. Okay, but this is freshman year, and I want to make sure you guys can see everything. So please show all these steps, because it's kind of essential that you know that they exist, okay? Right now we're trying to connect these 2 y's, okay? We want to combine them. Okay, so negative 6y plus 5y is going to give me negative 1y, again because the negative is bigger, all right? And then we got plus 18 equals 11, all right? So now to finish this up, I could take away 18 from both sides. Okay, and then we know 11 minus 18 is going to give me negative 7. But we got negative 1y, and we know negative 1y is the same thing as negative y. So what should I do now, right? We got this expression that looks a little weird. What happens when we see negative y equals negative 7? Well, if negative y equals negative 7, then think about it. What's positive y? Right, positive y is positive 7 there, okay? So what we're really doing to change the sign of a number is just to divide by negative 1 or multiply by negative 1. You could do either way. So a negative divided by a negative makes a positive. And again, a negative divided by a negative makes a positive. So we get positive 7 right here. This is the first coordinate that we have. And again, we need our x and our y coordinates. So we have the 7. So now to finish this up, we need to go plug this into here for our y value, right? So this means that x is equal, and then I'm going to write minus and blank parentheses plus 3. What number goes in the parentheses? 7, okay? So here we got negative 7 plus 3, okay? And I'm thinking you guys could do that in your head. This would give us that x equals negative 4. Okay, so this gets us through number 6, and I told you guys I'd get you through number 7 too, and the video is running 13 minutes, so we'll try to get into the next thing also. Don't forget to write, negative 4, 7 is a solution to the system of equations. Alright, so now we're looking at number 7. Okay, this is the last homework problem that's going to be in the video, and then after this you guys will be on your own to try to finish it. But again, stick around to the end because I will show the answer to number 8. And that should help you guys out, at least to be able to double check and like maybe do your work a second time if you got the wrong answer. Okay, so for this one, what we want to do is choose one to isolate. And in this case, it looks like I allowed you guys to have one that had a coefficient of 1. Okay, it is a negative 1, so it's still something that you guys have to deal with, right? Get that? And so in this case, what we're working on is this concept where I want to isolate, maybe the y is probably the easiest one, so I'm going to add the 5x to both sides. Okay, we added the 5x and still got a negative y, so that's a little annoying. We're going to have to deal with that right now. Okay, and the way I told you guys a second was we could divide both sides by negative 1, or we can multiply both sides by negative 1. I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by negative 1 so that we've done both procedures in the video. Okay, But when you multiply something by -1, it just means to change the sign of it. Okay? So all we really have here is -1 times -y just makes y. And on the left here, we have to change the sign of both of these things. So we're going to get -5x plus 9. All right? Now we're going to take this thing and we are going to we have the thing that we are going to go plug into the other equation. Okay, this expression right here. We want to plug that into the other one. Well, I wrote the blue one, so let's copy the red one. Okay, and since I isolated y, right, that's the one I isolated, so that's the one that I'm going to change into a blank parentheses, right? So that means the 5x is going to stay the same. Okay, but the 7y is going to become 7 times a blank parentheses. And then we did that twice. So that way you guys could remember what our step was. Okay, and then we're going to plug in here, -5x plus 9. Now what's going to happen? Okay, we're going to simplify this line, and that means to copy the things that don't change and to change the things that do change. All right, so a -7 times a -5 makes positive 35x. Okay, -7 times -9 makes -63. It's equal to 17 right here. So now we have this equation, but we can combine like terms and we can do the simplifying. So we're done with step 3 because we did the distribution. So now we're going to combine the 5x with the 35x, and that makes 40x minus 63 equal to 17. Okay, and now what we want to do is realize that this is a two-step equation. This is why I got some piñatas to put all over the room, because I really want you guys to see this and recognize it, okay? I need you guys to know that there's this two-step equation the second that you see it. I want you guys to not be even a little bit afraid of it or even a little confused that it is a two-step equation, all right? 63 plus 17 makes 80, okay? And that should feel good because we know that's a multiple of 40. So there's a good chance that we're on the right track and we didn't make any mistakes of any little negatives or something. Okay, so now to finish this up, I'm going to divide both sides by 40. Okay, what times 40 makes 80? I think we know that that's 2. So we got x equals 2. So now what's going to happen? Alright, I'm going to take this thing and plug it in up there. We got y times -5 plus 9. Okay, and the number that we're going to plug in for x is right here. It's 2. So what's that make? What is -5 times 2? That's -10 plus 9. And -10 plus 9 is -1. So we have our solution, 2 and -1. All right, and we could say, yes, this is a solution to the system of equations. Okay, so number 8, I'll show you guys the answer to that. I'll put the answers to all of them, and I think I might have had a couple of errors today, so if you guys can fix that error I think I had in, was it maybe second period or first period on one of the first 2 problems on the front, go figure out which one it was, okay? I believe that there was like a -13 in this problem. There was one that was like this where I copied a -3 instead of a 13. Let's see which one it was. It was probably number 2. So just go ahead and fix that if you see one of those steps I messed that up. You guys will be able to tell, and the answer key down here that I'm going to show you. Alright, so this is the answer key. Let's get a little closer look at it. Okay, I'll leave that there for a little bit. These are the answers, but again, who cares if you have the answers? I don't care if you got the answer. I care if you got the work, right? So we do want to make sure that you can show that you have them right. So keep trying number 8 until you got something that's exactly that. Alright, good luck getting ready for this quiz, everybody.